Welcome back to our channel. The year was 1964. The world stood in transition. The Civil Rights Act had just been signed into law, the Beatles invaded America with a sound never heard before, and the United States Mint was navigating a coin shortage that swept across the nation like a storm. In the midst of this pressure, with the Mint pushing production to record speeds, countless coins spilled into circulation: nickels, dimes, quarters, each stamped and released with relentless urgency. Among them, the unassuming 5-cent coin quietly emerged. It bore the familiar profile of Thomas Jefferson, facing left, calm and composed. Monticello stood tall on the reverse, as it always had. But something in that year, amid the rush, the pressure, and the overwhelming demand, went quietly, subtly awry. At first glance, the 1964 Jefferson nickel appeared ordinary. Millions were struck, over $1 billion, in fact. A coin so common it passed through hands unnoticed, jingling in pockets, resting in piggy banks, tossed into coin jars on bedside tables. For decades, it would be dismissed as mundane, its value no more than the number etched into its surface. But not all coins are created equal. And not all mistakes remain buried forever. It wasn't until decades later, when a retired railway technician named Samuel Whitmore began sifting through his childhood collection, that something stirred. Samuel had always been drawn to the hunt, the thrill of uncovering the overlooked, the dismissed, the misjudged. The coins were his memories, each one a small metallic time capsule. He knew the standard traits of a 1964 nickel like he knew the back of his hand. Yet, as he examined one particular piece under magnification, a subtle anomaly caught his eye: the rim. That was the first clue. It was slightly raised, more prominent than the rest. Odd, but not unheard of. Then the letters "In God We Trust." They were ever so slightly doubled. Not a dramatic doubling, but faint, like a shadow that shouldn't be there. Samuel's pulse quickened. He examined the reverse, running his eyes across. E pluribus unum. The same doubling effect, barely perceptible unless you knew what to look for. He blinked, pulled out his loupe again, and peered closer. No doubt about it. A double die. That night, Samuel didn't sleep. He scoured forums, auction archives, old coin guides that hadn't been updated in decades. Nothing definitive. Some mentioned possible anomalies in 1964 nickels, but none confirmed. The excitement gave way to uncertainty. Had he found something real? Or was it just another case of wishful eyes seeing what they wanted to see? He posted detailed images in a collector's forum, expecting skepticism, maybe silence. Instead, the thread lit up. Experts debated, others posted similar images, some clearer, some less convincing. But Samuel's coin sparked a conversation that refused to die. Numismatists who had spent careers cataloging coins began revisiting their archives. Mint records were inconclusive, but they hinted at something: a rushed die, replaced midway through production, possibly repolished. Enough to explain a slight doubling? Perhaps. Or maybe something more significant. Something that had remained in the shadows for far too long. As word spread, more collectors began to examine their 1964 nickels with renewed interest. A pattern emerged. The doubling wasn't widespread, but it existed. Not every mint had it. Philadelphia seemed to be the origin. Coins from Denver? Nothing. San Francisco? Not in that year. But Philadelphia? A select few bore the telltale marks. A doubling not from wear or misalignment, but from the die itself. A true double die obverse. The error, once invisible in plain sight, now began to gain shape and definition. With this revelation, the market shifted. At first, prices crept up modestly: $5, then $10, then $20. Casual collectors traded them like curiosities. Dealers added a small premium, not quite convinced. But as grading companies began to certify them, labeling them double die obverse class 2, the tide turned. Coin shows began to buzz. Dealers placed bids before coins even hit the cases. What had once been a nickel, just 5 cents, now fetched 50, 100, sometimes $200, depending on condition. But Samuel wasn't done. He revisited the coin again, under different lighting. That's when he noticed something else. A faint, ghost-like curve above Jefferson's head. At first, he dismissed it as die fatigue, but the arc was smooth, deliberate. Almost as if a partial mint mark had been struck and then erased. But 1964 nickels from Philadelphia weren't supposed to have mint marks. Only Denver used them. That year, he reached out to a contact at a grading service and submitted the coin for further examination. Weeks passed. Then the call came. The voice on the other end was tight with restraint. "We need to talk about this coin." The coin had not just been struck with a double die. It had been struck over another coin. A 1963 nickel, to be precise. A double strike. A rare misstep in the minting process where a planchet, already struck, is struck again with a different die. These occurrences are rare, usually caught, often destroyed. But in the chaos of 1964, with unprecedented demand, it's conceivable that a 1963 planchet re-entered the chamber and was struck again, this time by a 1964 Philadelphia die. The result was a hybrid. A coin born of 2 years, 2 mints, and a moment of human error never meant to reach the light of day. This changed everything. The value surged. At auction, the first verified 1964 nickel with both a double die obverse and a ghosted prior strike sold for $3,500. Then another, less dramatic but still error-laden, reached $2,100. The rarity, compounded by the complexity of the error, sent ripples through the numismatic world. Collectors clamored for any variation. Magazines published breakdowns, and YouTube channels dissected the discovery frame by frame. Yet the coin's journey was far from over. In 2021, a young collector named Tasha Morales, barely 19 and new to the hobby, stumbled upon a coin in a bulk lot she'd bought at a flea market for $20. She had watched Samuel's videos, read the forums, and trained her eye to spot the unusual. One nickel stood out. It bore the familiar doubling, but more than that, the Monticello on the reverse had an extra step. Literally. A design element not found on the standard reverse. It matched early-stage dies never released to circulation, dies that had supposedly been destroyed. Experts confirmed this was a transitional die variety, likely struck during die testing before being pulled from production. Somehow, the die had made its way into regular circulation. The coin was authenticated, preserved, and placed for private sale. It sold for $18,750. The buyer was anonymous. Some speculated it was a museum. Others whispered about a private investor building a secret error coin collection. But for Tasha, the find changed her life. She started her own collector's blog. A year later, she quit her job to pursue numismatics full-time. All because of a nickel that had once passed through hands unnoticed for nearly 6 decades, and still, questions linger. How many of these errors exist? Are there more hybrid strikes out there? Transitional die examples? The Mint, for its part, remains tight-lipped, issuing no official statement. The original die logs from 1964 are incomplete. Some suspect that under pressure, damaged or retired dies were reused without formal documentation. Others believe a small batch of transitional dies were accidentally introduced into production and never recovered. Whatever the truth, the 1964 5-cent coin has taken on a new identity. No longer a background character in American currency, it has become a riddle, a relic wrapped in mystery, bearing the fingerprints of history, accident, and discovery, and then another twist. In late 2024, a collector submitted a coin for authentication, claiming it bore quadruple die characteristics. Not double, not triple, but 4 separate impressions. Skeptics rolled their eyes. But the coin? It passed every test. The doubling was not a trick of light, not post-mint damage. Each set of letters, Liberty, in God we trust, even Monticello, showed 4 layered strikes, perfectly aligned yet distinctly separated. It was unprecedented. The coin, dubbed the Quad King, instantly became legendary. Offers exceeded $50,000 within days. Some claimed it was a fabrication, but the grading companies held firm. It was real. A true four-phase die impression. A mistake of such scale, it shouldn't have been possible. But 1964 was not a normal year. It was a year of overflow, of overworked machinery and endless shifts. The perfect storm for miracles and missteps alike. Today, collectors speak of the 1964 nickel with reverence. It is no longer just a coin. It is a puzzle, a legacy, a symbol of how even the smallest objects can carry immense history. The doubling, the hybrid strikes, the transitional dies, the Quad King, each a chapter in a tale still being written. And somewhere out there, in drawers, jars, and forgotten boxes, more pieces await discovery. In the waning days of the 1980s, the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia was operating at full capacity, pressing millions of coins daily to meet the nation's growing demand for small change. Amid the controlled chaos of machinery and metal, the unassuming 5-cent coin, commonly known as the Jefferson nickel, continued its standard production. Designed in 1938 by Felix Schlag, the obverse bore the stately profile of Thomas Jefferson, while the reverse featured his historic Monticello estate. By 1988, these coins were a familiar fixture in every American pocket, purse, and cash register, reliable, unremarkable, and expected to function flawlessly. But even in environments engineered for precision, anomalies find their way through. Somewhere along the busy production line of the 1988 run, a curious error slipped past the eyes of inspectors. It wasn't immediately evident. At first glance, the coin looked like any other. Same silver luster, same presidential gaze, same rounded edge. And yet, beneath that surface, something had gone fundamentally awry. Years later, in a modest suburban home in Ohio, a lifelong coin enthusiast named Henry Wilcox was sorting through a collection passed down by his grandfather. Henry wasn't a dealer or investor, he was a collector in the purest sense, guided by fascination rather than profit. He cherished the history behind each piece, often wondering whose hands had once held them. On this particular evening, as he sifted through rolls of nickels dated from the late 80s, a single coin refused to conform. There was a feeling an almost imperceptible hesitation as he picked it up. The coin felt the same, but its surface whispered a difference. The details were blurred, almost ghostly, especially around Jefferson's jawline. His eye lacked its usual sharpness, and the rim of the coin appeared strangely off-center, not quite uniform. Curious, Henry examined the reverse. The steps of Monticello, which normally stood in neat relief, seemed washed out, nearly flattened. He flipped the coin over again and squinted, puzzled. At first, he considered the possibility of wear. After all, coins in circulation often succumb to the gradual erosion of time and transaction. But something didn't add up. The wear was inconsistent. Certain parts of the design remained crisp, like the Liberty engraving and the date, 1988. But the rest seemed oddly melted, like wax near a flame. That strange contradiction ignited a flicker of suspicion. Henry set the coin aside, just to be sure. He didn't know what he had yet, but he knew it deserved a second look. A week later, he visited a small coin show in Columbus, carrying the coin in a cloth pouch tucked into his jacket. He approached a veteran numismatist named Arlo Finch, a retired metallurgist with a reputation for spotting rare anomalies. Arlo took the coin, examined it under a magnifier, and for a moment said nothing. Then came a low hum of intrigue, followed by a careful nod. "You've got something here," Arlo murmured, his fingers tightening around the loop. "This isn't wear. This is a mistrike. And not a common one either." As the two men discussed it further, it became clear that Henry's 1988 nickel had been struck from a worn or misaligned die, a tool used to press the coin's image onto blank planchets. But that wasn't the full story. There were signs of a possible double strike, a scenario in which the coin had been struck twice, ever so slightly off-center during each impact. That, combined with the weakening die, resulted in a unique, haunting distortion that no standard circulation coin should possess. It wasn't flashy or garish. The error revealed itself through subtle discrepancies. The arc of Jefferson's profile, a faint crescent shadow beneath the date, a doubling in the lettering that only the most attentive eye could notice. To the untrained eye, it was just another old nickel. But to those in the know, it was a whisper of the mint's hidden imperfections, a fluke of history preserved in metal. At first, Henry didn't intend to sell it. He held on to the coin like a secret. But word got out. Collectors talk, and soon murmurs of a mysterious 1988 5-cent error began to circulate through online forums and private auctions. A quiet bidding war erupted behind the scenes, with collectors eager to claim what many now referred to as the Shadow Jefferson. The first offer Henry received was modest, around $50. But within months, that number doubled, then tripled. The coin passed through hands briefly in 2003, fetching over $800 at a regional auction. From there, it vanished for nearly a decade, presumed locked away in a vault or buried deep in a private collection. Then, like a long-lost artifact, it resurfaced in 2012, this time commanding over $2,000 in a discreet transaction between elite collectors. Each sale amplified its mythos. It wasn't just the error, it was the rarity of the error in such pristine condition. Most die deterioration coins are dismissed or lost in circulation. But this one had survived, untainted, preserved by chance. The market's appetite for error coins had shifted by then. Collectors once obsessed with flawless mint-state specimens now yearned for the rare, the odd, the unrepeatable. Coins that told a story beyond their face value. And the 1988 Jefferson nickel, with its ghosted features and spectral rim, told a tale more compelling than most. But what truly sealed its legend wasn't revealed until 2019. During a numismatic symposium in Denver, a collector named Marla Dorsey presented a paper titled Striking Evidence: A Reevaluation of Late 80s Nickel Dies. Her team had been analyzing coins from the 1987 to 1989 runs, comparing anomalies in strike pressure and die degradation. Using advanced imaging techniques, they discovered a chilling possibility. The die used to mint the Shadow Jefferson nickel might not have been a standard nickel die at all. Buried within the blurred outlines of Jefferson's hairline was a faint trace, a curve, a taper that shouldn't have existed. It wasn't part of the original Schlag design. Cross-referencing with overlay software, Marla's team concluded that the die used may have been improperly paired with a blank intended for a different denomination. Some speculated it could have been a dime planchet that was mistakenly fed into the nickel press, a rare, but not unheard of error. But the measurements didn't align perfectly. The weight was correct for a nickel, the metal composition matched, but the shape ever so slightly was inconsistent. The coin was minutely thinner than standard issue. That's when Marla dropped the final bombshell. She proposed that the die used may have been an experimental hybrid, part of a test batch that was never meant to go public. A transitional artifact, accidentally released. This revelation upended everything. The coin wasn't just an error. It was a relic of an undocumented test phase, a window into the secret workings of the mint during a period of technological transition. Suddenly, its value wasn't just in the mistake, it was in its mystery. A coin no one could fully explain. A silent testament to a moment when machines faltered and humans didn't notice. Or perhaps, chose not to. Prices soared overnight. Appraisals leapt from 5 digits to whispered 6-figure offers. Major auction houses began inquiries. But by then, the coin had disappeared once more, rumored to be in the possession of a reclusive collector in the Pacific Northwest who refused all offers, declining even to authenticate it publicly. The mystery deepened. In its absence, replicas emerged, some crude, others dangerously convincing. The mint issued statements disclaiming knowledge of any transitional dies in 1988, but their silence on key details only fueled speculation. Was it a rogue test run? A technician's mistake? Or something more deliberate? a scrapped initiative quietly buried in the vaults of mint history? To this day, only one confirmed specimen of the Shadow Jefferson has been seen and documented with any certainty. But whispers suggest there may be others hidden in forgotten coin jars, lost in circulation, mistaken for common change. What began as an overlooked anomaly in a roll of nickels became a modern numismatic legend. A coin born of accident, elevated by curiosity, and transformed by mystery. Its true worth? That remains elusive. But somewhere in the convergence of error, chance, and secrecy, the 1988 5-cent piece found its place, not just in collections, but in coin folklore. And for collectors like Henry Wilcox, that single moment of quiet discovery was all it ever needed to be. 2003, the United States Mint was in full stride, producing coins at a staggering rate to meet the nation's endless demand for change. Among the countless coins minted that year, the humble 5-cent piece known affectionately as the nickel continued its long tradition, featuring Thomas Jefferson's profile on the obverse and the iconic Monticello on the reverse. It was a coin so familiar that millions barely gave it a second thought as it changed hands, passed along in pockets, registers, and coin jars across the country. But beneath its familiar visage lay a fascinating story, one that would only slowly unravel over the following years. The 2003 nickel, though seemingly ordinary, harbored a secret imperfection, a minting anomaly that escaped the ever-watchful eye of the mint's quality control, and would later send ripples through the numismatic community. This wasn't an error that boldly screamed for attention. It wasn't a glaring double die or a glaring off-center strike visible to the naked eye. Instead, it was a subtle imperfection, a delicate whisper of something out of alignment, a ghostly echo in the design, almost invisible unless you looked closely, very closely. The United States Mint, while equipped with advanced machinery and rigorous inspection processes, is still subject to the occasional flaw. With millions of coins produced daily, the machinery that strikes these tiny discs of metal sometimes falters. Dies wear down, presses slip, and in rare instances, a coin is struck twice or pressed with misaligned elements. These flaws are the birthplace of error coins, turning mundane currency into coveted collector's treasures. In 2003, something unusual happened during the nickel production process. For reasons initially unclear, a batch of coins received a second, partial strike. But this was not a typical double die, where a design element appears clearly doubled in bold. Instead, the effect was far more subtle, a faint, blurred doubling around the letters, particularly the word Liberty and the date on the obverse. The doubling was ghost-like, an ethereal shadow just off the primary design. Mark, a seasoned coin collector with a passion for spotting errors, stumbled upon this anomaly purely by chance. Mark had spent years honing his skills, developing a keen eye for the nuances that separate ordinary coins from extraordinary ones. One day, while casually sorting through a mixed batch of nickels from a local bank, he noticed something unusual on a 2003 5-cent piece. At first, the difference was almost imperceptible. But as Mark examined the coin under magnification, his curiosity ignited. The date appeared thickened and slightly doubled. The Liberty inscription bore a shadowy twin to its letters, as if an invisible hand had nudged the design ever so slightly during the strike. This was not just a smudge or wear. It was a clear sign of minting imperfection. Mark's mind raced. Could this be a new kind of double die? Or perhaps a rare partial double strike, something not widely documented? The more he studied the coin, the more convinced he became that this was something special, something that might have escaped the attention of even the most meticulous mint inspectors. Driven by a blend of excitement and cautious skepticism, Mark began researching. He scoured numismatic literature, scanned online forums, and reached out to fellow collectors. Slowly, he pieced together a growing body of evidence. A handful of other collectors had identified coins with similar faint doubling from 2003, suggesting it wasn't an isolated error but a small batch issue. But it wasn't just the doubling that made these coins remarkable. In some examples, another defect was visible, a fine, almost hairline die crack near the coin's rim. This crack, subtle and easy to miss, etched a delicate raised line that curved over the reverse side, interrupting the normally smooth contour of Monticello's dome. Such cracks are signs of a die nearing the end of its useful life, but their presence alongside the doubling error made the coins all the more fascinating. This combination created what collectors would later call a hybrid error. A coin with more than one kind of minting anomaly is rare. Usually, a die crack alone is interesting, and a doubling error is highly collectible. But the intersection of both, a coin struck twice with a cracked die, was exceptional. As the story of these 2003 error nickels circulated quietly among collectors, their rarity began to affect their perceived value. Early on, the coins commanded only modest premiums, maybe a few dollars above face value. But as more examples were authenticated and shared, the market took notice. Auction prices crept upward, turning these error nickels from curiosity into coveted prizes. The value journey was anything but straightforward. At times, skepticism slowed interest. After all, subtle errors can be mistaken for wear or post-mint damage. But with proper authentication and the discovery of additional specimens, confidence grew. Collectors who once ignored nickels began hunting these specific 2003 examples with an intensity reserved for rarer coin types. Over the course of several years, prices fluctuated in an unpredictable dance. When a well-preserved, certified error nickel appeared at auction, bidding wars ensued. In these moments, the value surged dramatically, driven by collectors who recognized the coin's unique place in mint history. The premium paid for a high-grade, clearly doubled and cracked 2003 nickel sometimes reached hundreds or even low thousands of dollars, a remarkable leap from its everyday face value. Yet the true climax of this coin's tale lay in an unexpected twist, one that emerged only after an extraordinary find surfaced from a private collection. This particular specimen showed all the previously noted features: faint doubling on the obverse, the delicate die crack on the reverse. But it also displayed an additional anomaly, a slight off-center strike, just enough to shift the Monticello design noticeably toward one edge. The building appeared skewed, the edges cropped unusually. This triple error coin, partial double strike, die crack, and off-center strike, was unlike any other discovered in the 2003 nickel series. Its complexity made it a numismatic holy grail, a singular artifact capturing multiple layers of minting mishap in a single coin. The rarity of such a combination is staggering. Experts examined this coin under microscopes, analyzing its metal flow and the patterns of wear. The off-center strike was likely caused by a misfeed of the planchet into the press, combined with the use of a cracked die and the partial doubling effect from the partial second strike. The mint's machinery, for all its precision, had experienced a cascade of errors during a brief window. The market's reaction was electric. Suddenly, the 2003 nickel error was no longer just an oddity. It was a story of rarity compounded, a phenomenon that few coins could match. Collectors scrambled to authenticate and locate other examples with similar traits. Private sales reached into the tens of thousands of dollars, and some speculated that a truly pristine example of the triple error nickel might one day command six figures. This unexpected twist reshaped how collectors viewed error coins. Rather than isolated mistakes, errors could combine, creating rare hybrids that amplified both historical intrigue and monetary value. It forced numismatists to reconsider how mint errors are categorized and valued, opening new avenues of research and collection. Mark, whose initial curiosity had set this entire narrative in motion, watched with awe as his once modest discovery became a legend. For him, and for countless others, the 2003 nickel error was a reminder of the magic hidden in everyday objects, the stories waiting to be uncovered in the smallest details. Years later, new examples still emerge, each adding a brush stroke to this ongoing story. Some show more pronounced doubling, others exhibit longer or more jagged die cracks. A few rare coins even suggest faint signs of additional minting anomalies, hinting at the possibility of yet undiscovered varieties within the same year. For collectors, Each coin is a mystery wrapped in metal, a tangible record of human and mechanical imperfection, a physical link to the mint's history. The 2003 5-cent coin era is not just about rarity or value. It's about connecting with the past, with the process, and with the thrill of discovery. This coin's journey from everyday currency to a prized collector's item exemplifies the unpredictable path of value. Initially overlooked and dismissed, it quietly transformed into a symbol of numismatic fascination, a testament to the fact that even the most common coins can carry extraordinary stories. And so the 2003 nickel era remains a whispered legend in the world of coins, a reminder that perfection is sometimes found in imperfection, and that even the smallest slip in the minting process can leave an indelible mark on history and on collectors' hearts.